In their tongue, he's Dovahkiin, Dragonborn.
What's going on YouTube? This is Hero Stormwolf, and welcome to the final part of the Perkus Maximus Mod coverage. This time we're going to be taking a look at the final possible class, which is the Warrior. This is a master of combat of light and heavy armor and weapons. So this one may be a little bit extensive as well, since we're dealing with weapons. Now the way this mod works when it comes to weapons, it categorizes into three different topics. One is piercing weapons, another one is bladed weapons, and the last one is blunted weapons. Now some of these weapons can mix in between two or three of the topics, such as one being a bladed piercing weapon such as a dagger, or a pickaxe, which is counted as a blunt slash piercing weapon. There'll be a graph in the video probably right about now that shows off the majority of what weapon category this is, and this is very important if you're going to make a warrior type class, because certain perks in the light weaponry and heavy weaponry will depend on which weapon you're using. So if you upgrade something in the heavy weaponry and it only works for piercing weapons, but you usually use a blunt weapon, you may have just wasted a skill point, and we'll get more into that once we actually hit the perks. There'll also be another graph that also deals with such things such as bleeding, defensive buffs, and staggering. This is also included with the Perkus Maximus mod. So it does more than just buffing yourself and stats. It also works with weapons all around the world, and this works with enemies as well as allies. So just something to take a look at before you get started if you do make yourself a warrior. So the main skills you're going to be want to focus on if you do make a warrior type class is smithing, heavy armor, walking, heavy weaponry, light weaponry, and ranged weaponry, which actually can be debatable if you want to use that as a thief or a warrior, but in any case it's what's marked on the page itself. So we're going to go over smithing. This is going to be probably the quickest one to go over. What smithing does in general is it allows you to reforge all of your gear to go farther beyond in tempering. Once you hit master smithing levels, you can actually create certain weapons that cannot be tempered anymore because of how powerful they are, or they cannot be enhanced. This also allows you to make certain traps and jewels that are way valuable than anything in the game, and also allows you to create certain weapons and break down resources for either armor or weapon or pieces that you don't need anymore, so you can get down to resources. So we're just going to go over a brief overview of most of the perks here, with Craftsman being the first one. At level 1 is a 25% better tempering. At Craftsman level 2, its tempering is X better, where X is the smithing skill 0.0 or 0.5. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Material leather unlocks leather armor crafting and tempering recipes. While wearing full leather armor, gain 15% fire and frost resistance. So here you go, something that if you're actually wearing the armor that you're a master at smithing at, you actually get bonus passive perks, so that's actually something to look into. Material Moonstone unlocks Moonstone armor and weapon crafting and tempering recipes. While wearing full Moonset armor, all spells are 5% cheaper to cast. Same thing with Corundum. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Same thing here. You'll get to be able to craft using weapons and recipes with this. While wearing the full armor set, you'll actually get a regen buff of health and stamina. It regenerates 20% faster. Material Matcholite unlocks Matcholite weapon and armor crafting. Same thing here. While wearing full Matcholite armor, 10% of all incoming spells are absorbed. Dragon Material unlocks Dragon Bone and Dragon Scale armor, weapon crafting, tempering recipes. While wearing full Dragon Plate or Dragon Scale armor, move 5% faster and deal 10% more damage with frost and fire. So before we move on, like the mage and the thieves, the perks here is called mastery perks. Same deal here, you can only choose one per character, and what these do is they're very high level masteries. Usually in the case of smithing, like we're going over now, they'll be able to let you create certain recipes that can only be created if you get that perk. So Meltdown unlocks Meltdown recipes for all armor and weapons whose material perks you have at the smelter, metal, or tanning rack. So like I said before, this lets you break down armor sets and items that you don't need, so you get materials from it. Material gold and silver unlocks crafting and temper recipes for silver weapons and various jewelry. Material refined silver, same thing like gold and silver. Copycat, here's a long one. Unlocks various crafting recipes for artifact essence and for unenchanted copies of various Daedric artifacts in your inventory. Artifact essence is crafted at a smelter and requires a Daedra heart and 3 soul gem fragments in 1 various combinations. Its sole use lies in the creation of artifact replicas. Crafting recipes for artifact essence only shows up if you have the Daedric heart in your inventory. Daedric artifacts replicas require 1 artifact essence as well as 3 pieces of material you use when tempering an artifact when crafted. The recipes only show up if you have the original artifact in your inventory. I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not exactly 100% sure what this means. I believe is that as long as any Daedric artifact, I suppose like the Daedric artifacts in the game that you can collect, you can make a carbon copy of that. So like the I believe it's called the Dawnstar sword. You can make a carbon copy of it, but it'd be unenchanted. So if you wish to add your own enchantment to that weapon, I believe that's the gist of what Copycat does. So moving on from that, we have Weaponsmith. Can reforge any craftable weapon whose material perks you have into a more lightweight version with slightly better stats. Reforged weapons have 30% less weight, 10% attack speed, and 10% damage. So any weapon I believe that if you've crafted before, you can craft again and make it lighter, and it'll be a lot faster to swing and a lot more damage. Armor, same thing with the Weaponsmith more or less. You can craft any armor whose material perk you have into a more lightweight version. Reforged armor has 30% less weight and 50% armor value. And here's one of the masteries, Warforged. Allows you to craft reforged gear into Warforged gear at the forge. Warforged gear has considerably better stats than regular gear but cannot be enchanted. While using a Warforged weapon, attacks consume no stamina. While wearing at least 4 pieces of Warforged armor and any material combination, you gain all armor bonuses from the material perks you know. That actually sounds pretty broken. So to break that down, if you make a Warforged sword, you'll no longer lose stamina when you're attacking with it. If you make Warforged armor and you have 4 pieces of that armor, any bonuses that you get from those stats that you have, which you wear the full armor, actually applies to your character. So judging just from that alone, this is probably something I would say definitely pick up. But in any case, we're going to show off the rest before we actually make that decision. Hunting Grounds. Unlocks bear trap crafting recipes at the forge. So this is actually interesting because I guess in order to unlock the bear traps, you actually need to, for the thief class, you have to unlock in the hunting grounds, which can also be unlocked in the thief. So that's kind of counterintuitive. But anyway, unlocks bear trap crafting recipes, grants lesser power place trap. Place trap opens up the menu that allows you to select a trap that can be placed at the point you aimed at. Has a range of 10 feet. If you prefer to manually place traps by dropping the inventory, that's still possible. Okay. Next rank, unlocks spikes crafting recipes at the forge. Spikes can be triggered multiple times, but cannot be collected again after they're placed. Bear traps base damage is 60, spike damage is 30. Both traps damage affect the target's armor value. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. Next one is inexorable grip, excuse me. Physical trap damage increased by 40%. Level 2, physical trap damage increased by 80%. So initially you can probably kill with the trap, a well-placed trap depending. Leg cutter. Physical trap damage ignores the target's armor rating, or physical trap damage. So again, you can probably kill with traps depending on what difficulty you set in the game. Material steel, same deal like anything else. If you can unlock steel armor and weapon crafting while wearing full steel armor, including incoming bow damage reduced by 10%, and incoming crossbow damage reduced by 20%. Same thing here. By dwarven metal, you can unlock armor and weapons with dwarven materials. While wearing a full dwarven armor, you take 15% less damage from Falmir and Dwynmere machines. Okay, probably pronounced that wrong. That thing. I believe it's Chalcum, I think. I'm definitely pronouncing that wrong. Anyway, unlocks the armor and crafting recipes for that particular material. While wearing the full armor set, the weapons deal 15% more damage. I'm pretty sure someone in the comments is going to correct me on that, so go right for it. Anyway, Ebony. Unlocks ebony armor and weapon crafting and tempering recipes while wearing full ebony armor. Magic resistance is increased by 10%. Daedra armor set, or whatever, material Daedra. Unlocks Daedra armor and weapon crafting and tempering while wearing the full armor set. Incoming blade damage is, or incoming blade weapon attacks 10% armor, and Daedra summoning spells last 15% longer. Very weird wording. We're going to unlock material dragons, and of course the last one is the Warforged. Alright, I actually missed a few. Animusconly? Jesus. Unlocks crafting recipes for container, dwarven spider. When dropped from the inventory, these items spawn a permanent dwarven companion. When activated, you can collect the companion again and again and again. So pretty much you'll be able to craft a dwarven spider at level 1, which you can deactivate or activate and pick up and use again and again as long as it isn't dead. Rank 2 of this has the dwarven ballista. When dropped from the inventory, these items spawn a permanent dwarven companion. Same thing again, you can pick it up again and again and again. This is for rank 2. For rank 3, you can actually make a Frost Centurion, a container, a a Fire Centurion, and a Steam Centurion. So again, same difference here. You can spawn it again and again and again if you activate it. So it pretty much comes in a ball form. I'll show it off. And then you can actually pick it up again and again. Reduces the weight of all container items by 80%. That's mass production. Repair unit. Unlocks recipe for container, dwarven med spider. Dwarven med spiders are bulkier and larger than regular dwarven spiders and heal mechanical allies automatically when nearby. So you can spawn a Centurion, then spawn a meta spider, and they'll keep healing that Centurion over and over again, of course, until the meta spider dies. So we'll go to a nearby forge and we'll check out some of the stuff that you've unlocked with the smithing perks. So as you can see here, we're at the forge and we've unlocked pretty much all the crafting recipes. So certain swords can now be made, like the Duke's longsword, the Valkyrian blade, the full disc, some French shit, the Guardian longsword, things like that. Same thing with Imperial, steel, leather, dwarven, elven, Balmer, etc., etc. So if you use to craft one of these, or craft the full armor set, you'll get bonus perks for it. Daedric, same thing here. Jewelry, you can make more expensive jewelry, which values increased heavenly, or not heavenly, but exponentially, so that you can sell it off for a bigger profit. And as here you can see the containers that I mentioned earlier. So here you have the dwarven ballista, the medi spider, dwarven spear, regular spider, fire centurion, frost centurion, steam, etc., etc. So I'll get one of these each and I'll show them off right outside of town. And before I show off the containers, just a brief explanation. As you can see, I can make certain materials by breaking down armor. As you can see here, I have the Aphrodite armor on me, but I can break it down if I no longer need to wear it, and I can get materials from it to make better stuff or different stuff. This can be used with a lot of different armor sets, weapons, things like that. Just wanted to show that off real quick before we move on. So, as you can see, we have the containers for the Centurion and the Med Spider. What you do is, you press the use button, or, excuse me, you drop it, and a Medi Spider is activated. Go. There's the Centurion. And these actually act as companions. As you can see, you can store them. We'll drop all of them. There you go. Like you can see, there's all the Centurions. And you can actually go up to them and pick them up. Now, it won't show that you can pick them up back up. For some reason, the wording's not placed that you can actually talk or store them back. So you just need to go up and either press the A button if you're using a 360 controller, or use the interact button, whatever it is on PC. I can't really think of it right now. But with the smithing perk, you can actually pretty much summon these at will. You can drop them and summon them and pick them back up, so they're not always walking around with you. Very useful for exploring dungeons, or if you just need instant companions with you. So moving on to the next perks you want to take a look at, depending, is the heavy armor. Now, heavy armor, pretty much as it's self-explanatory, it has better defense, usually slower than light armor, but you can take a lot more hits. So at level 1, conditioning, worn heavy armor is 20% lighter, so this fixes it being so heavy and bulky so you can barely move. At rank 2, heavy armor is 25% lighter, negate movement speed penalties from heavy Surus, so the top of it's not as heavy anymore. And at level 3, it's 30% lighter, negates movement speed penalties from the heavy Surus and attack speed penalties from the heavy gauntlets. So that means that originally when you had gauntlets on, heavy gauntlets, it would slow down your attack speed. If you level this up to condition 3, which I probably recommend that you do, you can actually swing usually at normal or faster speed with heavy gauntlets. So better protections, faster swing. Stalwart defense while wearing heavy arm, head, chest, legs, and shield. Incoming power attacks are 30% weaker. At rank 2, same deal here, except it's 50% weaker. So you'll pretty much take half damage if you're wearing full heavy armor set. It doesn't matter which heavy set or which armor pieces you're wearing, as long as it's all heavy armor and you have a shield. Chest rage while wearing heavy arm, head, chest, and leg armor, and while your health is below 30%. Time slows down by 10% and melee attacks are 10% stronger. At rank 2, this increases to 45% below health. Time slows down by 10% and melee attacks and destruction spells are 50% stronger. Unshakable, wearing heavy armor, wearing heavy arm, head, chest, and leg pieces, negate incoming stagger attacks. So that means that you can no longer be interrupted if you're wearing heavy armor. So your swing will always happen. Bull's charge while wearing heavy arm, leg, chest, and arm, head, chest, and leg armor, and while not blocking, run into enemies to strike them down. Does not work on ghosts, dragons, or giants. So here's another mastery: Unyielding Tower. Grants toggleable ability Unyielding Tower. While activated, move 30% slower, and all incoming damage and spell is reduced by 50%. May be toggled on a total of 4 times after resting. So once you rest, you can activate this ability 4 times. Then you'll have to rest again, activate the ability 4 times again, etc, etc. So pretty much with the combined armor perks, you can make yourself almost invulnerable for a brief period of time. Be very careful though, as you are 30% slower, so I would say use this ability on more melee battles instead of ranged battles, because you'll be slowed down and it'll take you that much longer to get to them, and by then you already have like 20 arrows in your ass. So just be aware of that. I would use this more for melee damage, or if you're attacking a dragon, you can activate it while he's on the ground, do a couple of swings, deactivate it, activate it again, etc, etc. So exploit weakness, heavy. Against enemies wearing at least one piece of heavy armor or no light armor, ignore 20% armor and deal 10% more weapon damage. I believe you get multiple exploit weaknesses like that. Deflective Cage while wearing heavy arm, leg, chest, and head pieces. Incoming shock magic is 20% weaker. Works on top of magic resistance, so you can actually make yourself pretty resistant to magic with this. Rank 2 shock magic is 25% weaker, and all incoming hits from bladed and piercing weapons are 10% weaker. This works also with weapon value and magic resistance. Against all odds, ranked 1 while wearing heavy arm, head, chest, and leg pieces. Each enemy within 8 feet range increases your armor rating by 40. For rank 2, while wearing heavy arm, head, chest, and leg pieces, each enemy within 16 feet instead of 8 feet increases your armor damage. So just a wider range, wider radius of which the perk activates. Unbreakable, same thing here. Heavy arm, head, chest, and leg armor negate the effects of any enemy perk that reduces armor. Monolith, while wearing heavy arm, leg, chest, etc, etc. Incoming unblocked hits stagger the attacker. So each time you do a strike on an enemy, you'll actually stagger that attack, or stagger the attacker. So you can actually stagger and almost win any fight, especially those who use dual swords or you only use a single sword and don't block. This is good against archers, mages, things like that. So very useful if you're wearing a full heavy armor set. Moving back from here, Juggernaut. While wearing heavy leg guards and moving, all melee attacks are 8% stronger. Rank 2 is 15% instead of 8. Heavy lifting. While wearing heavy gauntlets, power attacks are 15% stronger for rank 1. Rank 2, power attacks are 20% stronger and cause 10% less stamina. Secure shield. While wearing heavy swords, bleed and debuff rank of incoming attacks are reduced by 1, so less bleeding and debuff ranks. Mind Cage. If you're using thief perks as well, negate spellcasting malice from heavy armor. While wearing a heavy armor helm, incoming spells increase your magic resistance by 10% for 4 seconds. So again, you can mix these with other perks from other classes and actually make yourself a pretty formidable warrior. Stone Wall. While walking with a heavy shield, incoming destruction magnitude is decreased by 10%. Works on top of magic resistance, negate movement speed, malice from heavy shields, so you'll move a little bit more faster, I believe. Ancient Bulwark. While blocking with the heavy shield, incoming shout magnitude is decreased by 50%. Works on top of magic resistance, negates attack speed, malice from heavy shields. So for those creatures or enemies who actually use shouts within the game, you probably won't get knocked down with this now. You can still probably get staggered just a bit, but you'll no longer be knocked down, or you won't lose your weapons or things like that. So a lot of this stuff really can't be shown. It's more passive abilities. Things like, however, Unshakable, Bull's Charge, those things can be shown, but things like Secure Shield or Heavy Lifting, all this stuff is more of passive things. This is going to be more of the same deal with the light armor, which I believe I've already shown off light armor, so if you haven't seen that, check out the previous videos. But a lot of stuff is more passive abilities. I can, however, show off something like the Bull's Charge or the Unyielding Tower, so I'll show that off real quick. So here we have a typical bandit, and the skill I'm going to be trying to activate is Bull's Charge, which, if you look back at it again, while wearing heavy arm, leg, chest, and head pieces, and while not blocking, running enemies to strike them down does not work against giants. So hopefully we're going to sprint into her and she'll be knocked down. There we go. So pretty simple, pretty effective. And as you can see, this actually ties into what I was talking about earlier by piercing and cutting weapons. The greatsword, I believe, counts as not as a piercing, but as a slashing weapon, so it causes bleeding attacks. So that's actually something that you want to look into depending on what weapon you're using. But regardless, that's what the Bull Charge looks like. So here is the second ability that you get while leveling up heavy armor. It is the Unyielding Tower. It's a toggleable ability like I mentioned before. In exchange for movement speed, you'll get higher defense. So we're just going to piss off these people here. Activate. Oh, wrong ability. Sorry about that. There we go. Mastery Unyielding Tower activated. If we take a look at our buffs and debuffs here, as you can see, move 30% faster and ignore 50% all incoming spells and weapon damage. So as you can see, extremely slower.
She said she'd wait. Now ain't the bad time to get lost, friend.
As you can see, I'm taking far less damage than I would regularly. With the heavy armor perks, as you can see, I'm taking a lot less damage with this on, and actually staggers them as well, since they cannot pierce my heavy armor. So this is something that's going to be really useful for just general melee combat. They can't do any real damage to me. They're not really much of a threat. Now if he was to deactivate it, as you can see, times turn back to regular. You'll see them do slightly more damage, but again, they're pretty weak bandits. But this is just to show off that they can be toggled in and out 4 times. But as you can see, heavy armor, it's pretty much hard to get past my defenses. So moving on from that, we'll check out some light weaponry and heavy weaponry. So we're just going to be starting off with the heavy weaponry set because that's the weapon I'm going to mainly be using for this warrior class. As you can see here, starting at level 1, heavy weapon combat. Weapons covered by heavy weaponry deal 20% more damage. Weapons covered by light weaponry deal 5% more damage. So this is kind of a cross class between the two. so it doesn't feel like you're being necessarily weakened it doesn't feel like you're being necessarily weakened by going a heavy route if you want to still use light weapons, but at the same time, you're still going to want to focus on two-handed weapons. Rank 2 increases heavy weaponry damage to 40%, such thing as great swords, great axes, and any weapons covered by the light weaponry, which is your regular swords and stuff like that, deals 15% more damage. Open wound. All bladed weapons have their bleed rank increased by 1 on all attacks. So this is such as your piercings, your swords, your katanas, things like that. Heavy weapon handling. Power attacks will weapons covered by the heaven weaponry increases 20% damage, unlocks decapitation kill moves. Salvage strike. When performing power attacks, the debuff rank of any weapon covered by the heaven weaponry is increased by 1. Great critical charge. Unlock sprinting power attacks for weapons covered by heaven weaponry. Running power attacks gain a 100% chance to cause a critical hit with 50% critical damage. That's actually pretty high. So if you come in with a running attack, you can potentially kill. This can probably be comboed with the bull's charge as well, so very interesting. Beatdown. When performing power attacks, the stagger rate of any weapon covered by heaven weaponry is increased by 1. Crushing impact. All blunt weapons ignore 30% armor. At rank 2, all blunt weapons ignore 40% armor. Against targets wearing no body armor, all blunt weapons ignore 100% armor, which makes perfect sense. No armor, so the ship may have an armor resistant. Heart Seeker. All piercing weapons reduce target health by 3% of their current health every unblocked hit. So this is your spears, your daggers, things like that. At rank 2, this increases by 6% of every unblocked hit. Moving on from that, we're going to go to Sweep. Sideways, heaven weaponry attacks hit all targets in front of you, so as it should be with the original game. If you have 3 enemies in front of you and you use a sweeping attack, you can actually have potentially hit all 3 enemies. I actually found it weird because I thought this actually worked, but I guess it didn't within Skyrim. Shows how much I know about the vanilla game. Warbringer. Backwards heaven weaponry power attacks strike the target down to the ground. Works once per target. Additionally, backwards heavy weaponry power attacks against targets below 30% deal 300 more damage. So this is pretty much more or less a kill move if you use the backwards heavy attack. If they're pretty much almost dead, like it says 30%, you'll pretty much kill them with the added 300% bonus damage. Perfect precision. While performing a forward heaven attack or heavy weaponry attack, time is slowed by 15%. Again, I hate the way that Skyrim does the moving for perks, but anyway, moving on. All heaven weaponry power attacks destroy the target shield if it's blocking. So that's actually pretty cool. Though it can be a bit broken, I guess, if you're always breaking shields. It should be at a percentage, but that's just a personal opinion. Anyway, moving on from that. Reaper's Verdict. Piercing and blunt heavy weaponry weapons. Fucking words. Power attacks boost your attack speed by 4% and attack damage by 6% for 5 seconds if they connect. This bonus stacks. So each power attack that you hit on an enemy, your attack speed and your attack damage boost will increase for 5 seconds. This can be stacked. It doesn't say how many times, but it can stack multiple times. So as long as you're always hitting the enemy with power attacks, you'll always have that stat on you. Boiling Point. While wielding a blade or blunt heavy weaponry, I can't just understand why I just haven't say heavy weapon. Anyway, weapon, each incoming hit has a 10% chance to trigger a 50% heavy weapon damage buff that lasts for 12 seconds. Scarred. Blade or piercing heavy weapon power attacks mark the target as scarred. Scarred targets take 10% more damage from everyone and deal 10% less damage from anyone. Or maybe that's probably scared, not scarred. So that's scared, not scarred. I can't read. Anyway, Reaper's Gambit. At ranked 1, piercing heavy weapon. God, I fucking hate this. Piercing heavy weaponry weapons power attacks are 10% weaker and cause 25% less stamina. At rank 2, this is increased to 15% weaker and costs 40% less stamina. So while you're losing the overall attack damage of the piercing weapons, you'll lose less stamina while using that weapon. So it's kind of a trade-off there. So you're not completely broken. Great cleave. Blade, heaven, weaponry, weapon, regular attacks hit all targets in front of you. This is kind of similar to the sweep. Final breaker. Enemies below 70% health take 25% more damage from blunt weapon, heavy weaponry enemies. Enemies below 50% take 40% from blunt weapons. And then we have the Mastery Warrior's Harp. Another long explanation. Grants the lesser power Warrior's Harp. Usable once while resting. While activated, weapon damage dealt grows inversely proportional to the user's remaining health. Health up to a maximum factor of 2 at 0 to 5% health. Additionally, attack speed grows inverse proportionally to the user's remaining health, at 99, 80%. Health, 10% attack speed, 79, 50. Health and attack speed, attack speed is 15% from 49 to 20% health. It's a 20% attack speed buff from 9% to 0, which if you have 0, you're pretty much dead. The attack speed increased for 25%. This lasts 20 seconds. Reduces stamina to 0 once it wears off. So once this wears off, you're pretty much going balls in. So you attack faster depending on how much health you have left, which honestly, if you have a lot of the heavy weaponry perks and you pick this mastery, it seems like kind of a useless mastery. Simply because with all the heavy weapons, or all the heavy armor and weapons that you have, most likely, you won't take that much damage. So this seems like a wasted perk, but regardless, I guess if you go to the light armor perk, or if you go light armor but still want to use heavy weapons, this might be useful. But in combination with the stuff that you get with the heavy armor skills, I don't think that's something that you'll probably really be using. Again, here there's not really much to show off in terms of actually in combat stuff. I could probably show off an enemy with the shield blocking, so we'll summon a guard or something for that. And I believe there was one more. I don't think we can probably do decapitation moves. That's really based on numbers and percentage. But we can do this. We can also do the sweep. So again, not really much to show in terms of actual combat, but a lot of this stuff is more passive skills again. So we'll take a moment here and we'll summon a guard with the shield, and then we'll summon multiple guards to show off the sweeping thing, or the sweeping attack. So with this first group, I actually did remember there's another one, the Great Critical Charge. This unlocks a sprinting attack that has a chance of increasing critical attack damage. Though, honestly, it's kind of something that's hard to show, but unlocks a sprinting attack regardless. So, as you can see there, pretty much killed him in one hit, or I guess it didn't. There you go. You can see the animation. You'll do a jumping attack animation.
Tell you what, you start running, I'll stab you in the back.
You actually hear the sound effect of when the ability is able to be used, but from that, we'll do the Warbringer, which is a backwards heavy power attack. Again, this is not really something to show in terms of animations, it's more of effects. So you can see the debuff actually happening as he was dying, but of course, since I do a lot of damage regardless, you can still see the debuff actually happening. But moving on from that, this guy actually has a shield, so if we can actually get him to block, we can try and break his shield. So we'll see what happens. And of course he doesn't block because, yeah, he's not actually that good. So we'll try and summon a couple of guards. Guards usually carry shields, and we'll see if we can get them to break the shield. So we just summoned a regular guard here. I'm going to summon a few more just for the sake of actually having multiple targets with shields. So there we go. Going to piss them off, naturally. But as you can see right there, I actually showed off 2 demonstrations from that, if you caught it. What I did was both of them was actually blocking. So with the combination of the sweep, which allows me to use my my sideways heavy attack to actually hit both targets, and with the wall breaker, actually did break both their shields. So as you can see, a demonstration from that, we actually killed 2 birds with 1 stone. So very powerful and very effective stuff. So this is definitely something you want to look at if you want to use heavy weapons. So now we're going to be moving on to light weaponry, and then we'll take a look at the block skills as well, because these are most likely going to be playing hand in hand. So at ranked 1, same thing with the heavy weapon combat. At ranked 1, 15% more damage to light weapons. If you happen to use heavy weapons at the same time, you'll get a 5% damage increase in that as well. Rank 2, 35% with light weapons and 15% more damage with heavy weapons. Light weapon handling. Power attacks with the weapons covered by light weaponry consume 20% less stamina, unlocks decapitation kill moves. So a lot of these are going to be more or less just carbon copies of each other, except replacing heavy with light. Critical charge unlocks his sprinting attack, same things that we have with the heavy weapons. Running power attacks gain 100% chance to cause a critical hit with 50% critical damage. Proficient strikes. When performing power attacks, the debuff rank covered by all light weaponry is increased by 1. So again, a lot of these are going to be shared perks. Skilled slashes with power attacks. The bleed rank for any light weaponry is increased by 1. Clear cut. Critical chance for blades increased by 5%. Critical hit damage for blades is increased by 40%. That's rank 1. Rank 2, this is increased to 10%, and then critical damage is increased to 80%. Blunt impact. Sideways power attacks with blunt weapons deteriorate targets for 10 seconds. We'll show that off because I believe I do have a blunt weapon on me. This is increased to 20% at rank 2. Piercing thrust. Piercing weapons ignore 35% armor against targets that don't have a heavy cuirass or shield equipped. So again, this is more of a passive ability, not really something I can show off. Rank 2 ignores 50% armor 50% armor against targets that don't have a heavy cuirass equipped. They can still have a shield, but without that heavy top armor, you'll still do the 50% ignore the armor targets. Dual wielding. Negates damage malice for dual wielding, and perma mod dual wielding without this perk reduces damage by 30%. So pretty much without this, you'll do significantly weaker damage with dual wielding weapons. Rank 2, this increases the attack speed and damage while dual wielding by 10%. So it's actually noticeable if you dual wield weapons, but you don't have the dual wield perk on you, which makes sense. Salvage Storm, while dual wielding, standing power attacks hit all targets in front of you. Elemental Twister, while dual wielding, attack speed is increased by 5, and fire, frost, and shock damage increased by 25%. That's actually weird. I guess if you have your weapons equipped with elemental attacks, that's what it's really for. Counter. While dual wielding, initiating attack makes you invulnerable to weapon damage for 0.4 seconds. So it's a small window, but you won't be able to be hit for a very, very brief amount of time while initiating an attack. Moving on from that, we have Dervish. Piercing and blunt weapons are covered by light weaponry, cause the attack to fall, or cause the attack target to fall to the ground if they land a regular non-power attack hit while the target is attacking. So I guess if you're attacking someone and they do a regular attack on you, they will fall to the ground. Penetrate. Blocked power attacks with a blade and blunt weapons covered by light weaponry reduces the target's armor value by 200 for 5 seconds. That's a really big decrease. Blindside. Piercing and blade weapons covered by light weaponry deal 25% more damage when attacking enemies back within an 80-degree angle. So I guess if you initiate a sneak attack, then actually attack from the target from behind, you'll deal 25% more damage in the addition of whatever damage you get from using sneak attacks. At rank 2, this is increased to 35%, and the angle is increased to 120 degrees. So pretty much almost you can almost attack anywhere from side to side, and you'll actually get this buff. Blood Price. Piercing weapons covered by light weaponry deal 30% more damage against bleeding targets. The bleed rank of all piercing weapons covered by light weaponry increased by 1%. To black. Forward power attacks with blunt weapons covered by light weaponry strike any target not wearing heavy or light armor down. If the target is wearing heavy armor, it is instead disoriented for 60 seconds. Only works while the attacker's stamina is above 50%. Rising Wings. Unblock regular attacks with blade weapons covered by light weaponry increase your attack and movement speed by 3% per 4 seconds. Stacks with itself. And the mastery for this is Combat Sense. Grants lesser power combat sense usable once after resting. When activated, time is slowed down by 25% and attack and movement speed are increased by 15% for 20 seconds. Once it wears off, stamina is reduced down to 0. So, again, this is one of those things where you either need to get in and get out quickly, or you need to actually end combat because either you're somehow dying, or if you just want to end it quickly, you pop this once, and pretty much you'll get all the movement and attack speed buff, which means you can take out targets a lot more quickly. However, if you don't actually kill them within that time limit, pretty much your stamina will decrease. You can't use heavy attacks or anything like that. Blocking is going to be really hard for you, and I believe you can get knocked down a lot easier without stamina. So again, I could show this off just so you can see the time effects and the increased attack speed and things like that. So again, we'll summon a couple of volunteers, and I will show off a couple of these perks, including some of the dual wielding stuff, and of course pretty much the critical charge. So here's just a quick look at the critical charge that you can do with any one-handed. I think it's any one-handed slashing weapon, just to be sure. We'll take a look at that. So, okay, unlock sprinting power attack for any light weapons. So swords, canes, stuff like that. As you can see, pretty similar to the heavy attack. And just to show off, it also works with maces as well, which is considered blunt weapons. Same thing there. So just to show that off briefly. So here I'm going to summon a volunteer, and we're going to see that the blunt impact and work. We'll also do a couple more summoning enemies, and we'll show off some of the dual wielding stuff as well, such as the Salvage Storm, and stuff like that. I think I can probably not show off the counter, but definitely the Salvage Storm and pretty much how standing power attacks can attack all enemies. So
What do you need?
there you go, simple guard.
Stand still!
As you can see, that's the target being disoriented. Actually didn't last for 20 seconds as intended. It's a sideways power attack, my mistake. So here we go, we'll do a quick sideways one.
Son of a...
There we go.
You can't win this!
Even so, even as a sideways power attack, you'll disorient them from attacking and you'll cancel the attack. But even so, you really won't tell. It's really hard to tell that you're actually doing it. So we'll do some dual wielding here. So that's the standard forward attack. I'll summon more enemies so I can show that off. But as you can see, with slashing weapons and dual weapons, you'll attack a lot faster than you was if you didn't have them. And just so I don't forget, I'll show off the mastery for this, which is Combat Sense. As you can see, Combat Sense added. It's considered a lesser power, so I think you can use this technically multiple times, but even so, you'll still need to rest one day. So we'll summon some more guards here, and we'll activate it. We'll just do 2, just for the sake of convenience here. So I pop it, there's Combat Sense. As you can see, time is slowed down. I have a lot of buffs on me. There you go, that's Combat Sense. As you can see, time slows down, my attack speed went up, my attack damage went up, and there you go. As you can see, once it ran out, all my stamina has been decreased. So that's something that you need to worry about in the middle of combat. If you don't finish what you need to do, you could be put at a real disadvantage from that. So just be aware when using the Combat Sense Mastery perk. So here we're going to be taking a look at the blocking perks. Now, as you can tell already just from looking, there's not as many perks you can choose from this, so this is something that you might want to look into if you're going to be a warrior but want to use a sword and shield or a tanky class. Because you won't waste too many perks on it, but regardless, let's get started with that. Safeguard. Shield armor rating is increased by 15%. Blocking is 15% more effective. This is rank 1. At rank 2, shield armor rating is increased by 30%, and is 30% more effective. Sanctuary. While blocking, health and magic regenerate 20% faster, blocking an incoming spell only consumes 50% or 15% of its base cost as stamina. So that's actually pretty interesting. When you're blocking, it only consumes 15% instead of, I believe it's a certain amount. I can't think of it right now, but it actually helps you to benefit from blocking spells minus just taking them in the face. So at rank 2, health and magic is still regenerated by 20% faster. While not moving, the bonus doubles. So if you're standing still and blocking, then you will actually regenerate 40% health and stamina. So again, if they're not doing that much damage to you, but you need to kind of stop and collect yourself, and while you're blocking, you actually regenerate your armor and stamina a lot faster and get back into the fight. And blocking a spell only consumes 10% of its base cost as stamina. So instead of 15%, you consume, or it consumes 10%. Exhaust. After blocking a melee attack, the attacker's melee weapon skills are 20% or 25% worse for 4 seconds. That's rank 1. Rank 2, it increases to 30% for 6 seconds. Rank 3, 35 for 8 seconds. Again, a lot of passive abilities when it comes to things like blocking and armor. Debilitating Bash. Regular bashes reduce the target's health regeneration, magic regeneration, and stamina regeneration by 300 for 8 seconds. All bashes do 300% more damage. So initially, bashes are pretty weak on their own. They're really used just for interrupting and to kind of control the flow of combat. With this, they actually deal a little bit more damage, and they actually serve a higher purpose. Power Bash can now perform power bashes, so you can pretty much charge it and do a Power Bash. Blunt Supremacy. Power bashes with blunt weapons hit all targets in front of you, which is kind of weird because the way it looks, the animation for it, you actually don't really swing around in an arching motion. But regardless, it actually hits enemies in front of you. Repulse. Blocking with a blade weapon reduces attacker's health by 4%, which makes sense. Level 2, this increases to 7%, not 70. That'd be completely broken. Quick Reflexes. The timed blocking time interval increases to 0.5. Again, wording. Rank 2, the timed blocking time interval increases to 0.6 seconds. So I guess the amount of time that you have to raise up your shield and actually block an attack actually increases. So you have a little bit more of an open window to actually block an attack, minus trying to block and still taking damage. Replenish. Performing a timed block restores 20% of stamina per second for 1 second. So if you do a well-timed block, usually it'll bounce off and you'll regain some stamina instead of losing some stamina. This is increased to 2 seconds. So same thing here. You do a well-timed block, and for 2 seconds you'll get about 20, probably 40 points of stamina back, which gives you another chance to do another charge attack. Dispel. While time blocking with a light shield, incoming bow, arrow, and destruction spell damage increased by 80%. So pretty much when you see something coming towards you, and if you block it at the right moment, you'll decrease the damage by that by a really good margin. Overwhelm. When power bashing with a light shield, your melee damage increases by 25%, and your attack speed increases by 15% for 2 seconds, as long as your stamina is above 50%. When bashing with a light shield, your melee... That actually makes no sense, they're both the same thing. I believe one of these is supposed to be for heavy shields, but anyway, your melee weapon damage increases by 25%, and your attack speed increases by 15% for 2 seconds as long as your stamina is above 70%. Okay, never mind. So as long as your stamina is above 70%, your melee damage will increase by 25, and your speed will increase by 15 for 2 seconds. No, that's the exact same thing. I believe one of these is supposed to be for heavy shields, but it's kind of hard to tell with that wording. Regardless, moving on from that. Again, there we go. Guardian's Trick. Heavy shield time blocking has a 15% chance to disarm the attacker. So, as you can see, probably with Overwhelm, one of them is heavy shield, one of them is light shield. Shove. When power bashing with a heavy shield, the target is ragdolled as long as your stamina is above 60%. When bashing with a heavy shield, the target is ragdolled as long as your stamina is above 75%. Does not work on ghosts, mammoths, and dragons. Some weird wording there. I'm not sure if it's just me reading it not right, or if it's just the wording in general, but regardless, moving on from that. Block Runner can move faster while having a shield raised, so that way you don't have to pretty much walk and take damage. Shield Charge, when having a shield raised, sprinting consumes 10% stamina per second and knocks down knocks down every non-dragon, non-giant down. Also deals 4 damage per second. Last Stand grants the lesser power Last Stand, usable once after resting. When activated, reduces all incoming damage to 0 while blocking for 20 seconds. Reduces stamina to 0 once it wears off. So I'll show that off after kind of just go over what some of these do here, such as having the shove and the overwhelm, along with some, hopefully do some well-timed blocking, things like that. So we'll try and show off a couple of things from there. Alright, so I'm going to be showing off a little bit of the light shield stuff, and then I have a heavy shield as well that I can show. So more or less we're going to be showing things like the overwhelm, and this also works in conjunction with using powerful bashes. Hopefully we can get some well-typed intervals and stuff like that. So also be showing off the Block Runner and the Shield Charge. So we'll summon someone here. Summon an actual bandit. Or you know what? A guard would be fine. We only need one. I don't even know who you are. But okay. You'll do nicely. So again, we'll show off the bash and a powerful bash. Along with the bash, hopefully proc the overwhelm ability, which increases attack speed and attack damage for, or attack damage for 25% and attack speed for 15. So.
What are you doing? Be careful. Stop that. What are you doing?
Oh, she won't attack. Here you can go. You can see we're actually blocking some magic attacks. And actually shows off one of the decapitation moves from the previous perk, so that actually worked out in my favor. Though, gotta say, I wasn't expecting her to be a mage. I was kind of expecting another guard, but regardless here, we'll summon someone else.
Need something?
And now I can show off. This is what you like when you have the Block Runner. Pretty much you can move at normal speed while blocking. Very useful. And then of course we have the Shield Charge, which is gonna pretty much knock her down on her ass. So start by blocking here, and you can see the attack proc. There we go. Pretty cool. Can be used multiple times. So if you just need to shield in and get past a couple of people, very useful. Now here's my heavy shield. And with this I'm going to be showing off if the damn perks allow me to, the shove, which is using a heavy shield to pretty much use a power bash, which should knock her on her ass again, or at least leave her ragdolled, as long as my stamina is above 60 or 70%. So I have full stamina. There we go. As you can see, works effectively, knocks her on her ass. Very effective stuff. So everything else here is more passive abilities. I'll actually show off the Last Stand here. Just do a quick save. And so we'll piss her off. And then with this, we'll see that we'll take pretty much no damage while blocking any attack. See here, Last Stand. So let's make her angry.
Watch it. Don't no more.
There we go.
I yield.
We activated Last Stand. She's actually not attacking us. So hopefully she attacks us instead of running away.
Death awaits you.
As you can see, there we go. A couple of shock damages. No damage. But of course, stamina got decreased down to low. As you can see, by blocking,
Your kind has no place here.
the shelf perk. So a lot of stuff you can do. And as you can see, my attack speed increased for strike after doing the shield bash, things like that. So we'll try and do one more with the well-timed blocking. Hopefully we can show it off with that, because with well-timed blocking you have the chance to disarm an enemy. So there we go. It's a heavy shield time blocking has a 50% chance to disarm the attacker. So we'll summon a bandit or two and try and do a couple of well-timed strikes. Okay, so we have our bandit here.
You picked a bad time to get lost.
He has a hammer, so hopefully we can do some well-timed blocks here. Gonna be a little hard to actually disarm him, but regardless. You can see the shove actually works perfectly. Very good for getting someone off of you that's pretty much just demolishing you at this point.
Take me?
Disarming, though, is going to be a different story. Just because the window to actually counter that is actually very, very brief. But if you saw the thief video, pretty much it's the same effect to if I was to block with the unarmed weapons. What would happen is it would automatically disarm him. So again, the time blocking is very situational. It doesn't always work, but you just have to time it very carefully. So I would say practice with like a low-level character and just try and get down the time blocking. But anyways, we'll move on with it and we'll check out the last thing here, which is archery. So finally, the last perks that you might want to consider using, whether you want to be a thief or a warrior, is the ranged weaponry. This works for crossbows and bows all across the board. So pressing the block button while aiming any ranged weaponry will zoom in with the weapon. This is from vanilla. At rank 2, it will zoom in and reduce slow time by 20%. At rank 3, this increases to 30%. So this is something that's very familiar to vanilla Skyrim, so you shouldn't be surprised by that. Point blank. 15% short bow damage against targets that are between 30 and 20 feet away. 25% short bow damage to targets that are between 20 and 10 feet away. 35% short damage against targets that are 10 feet away. So the closer the target, the more damage you'll do with short bows. Now, of course, before I go any further, there's, I believe, 3 types of bows in the game. Short bows, long bows, and then crossbows. Short bows are usually good for short to medium range. Long bows are good for medium to long range, and then crossbows, I believe, are somewhere in between that. So whatever bow you pick, there will be certain perks that other types of bows won't be able to use. So just bear that in mind. For example, for point blank, you can only use this with short bows. This perk doesn't activate with crossbows or long bows. At rank 2, the numbers increase to 15% when they're 30 and 20 feet away, 35 when they're 20 and 10 feet away, and then 55 against targets that are less than 10 feet away. So just a damage increase with short bows altogether. Mobility, move at full speed while having a short bow drawn. Flanking. Short bow attacks hit the target side or back 90-degree angle in both directions, deal 25% more damage. So say your warrior's going in or your companion's going in and attacking and you stay back, you actually deal a little bit more damage if you hit them from the side or from the back. This increases to 40% more damage. Again, a lot of passive things are along with some of these weapons, so just bear in mind that I'm not showing off everything. It's more of passive perks that you'll have to actually see for yourself in the middle of combat. So short bow attacks that hit the target, and this is prominent flanker. Short bow attacks that hit the target side or back 90 degree in both directions stack up the target. only works once per target every 15 seconds. Staggers even targets that would be on staggered cooldown. See combat mechanics. So again, pretty self-explanatory. Once every 15 seconds, if you hit the target from the side with a short bow, you'll actually stagger them. Arrow Hail. Short bow attacks that hit in quick succession deal 10% more damage per successful hit. The target may change between hits. Stacks up to 30% after 4 hits. After 4 seconds with a hit, the counter resets. So as long as you keep welling on a target with the short bow, you'll get a 10% damage increase up to 30%. And that stays at 30% as long as you're hitting the short bows in a 4-second or target window. This increases to 50%. Again, after 4 seconds, if you don't hit it, if you don't hit something, then it resets the counter. Coup de grace. Ranged weapons deal double damage against enemies below 30% health. So that's more of the short bow stuff. Moving on from that, we have the longbow. You can draw a longbow for 3.5 seconds and total damage bonus of 30%. So the longer you hold the shot, the more damage you'll do. You can draw a longbow for 5 seconds and total damage for a 50% buff. Delivers the first rank effect after 3.5 seconds. So after 3.5, you'll get, I believe it's 30% damage boost. If you hold it for all 5 seconds, then you'll get the 50% damage boost. Keen's Lance. 25% longbow damage against targets that are between 40 and 70% away. As the same as before, this is, I believe it is, here we go. It is the same as point blank, except for longbows, which is King's Lance. So pretty much the farther away, the more damage you'll do with the longbow. So if you want, you can switch between the types of bows. So if they're far away, you can start off with the longbow, get a good 65% damage when they're farther away, and then switch to the longbow as they get closer and do more damage that way. You can mix the perks like that. At rank 2, the damage is increased from 25% when they're between 40 and 70% away, 55% when they're 70 and 100 feet away, and then any targets more than 100 feet away deal 80% more bonus damage to longbows. Baneful Ellen. Longbow attacks always stagger a moving target, so as long as they're moving towards you and you hit them, you'll stagger them back. So this is meant to keep them at bay before you have to get into melee combat. Rank 2, longbows attacks always stagger a moving target. Once per target, the longbow hit strikes to the ground. Okay, so the longbow target hit strikes to the ground. So once per hit, or once per target, I believe the first shot, as long as they're moving, it actually knock them to the ground instead of just staggering, but only works once per target. Prey. Longbow attacks hit the target's back 25 degrees in both directions, deal 100% more damage. So you'll pretty much be dealing double damage at that point. Takedown against staggered enemies. Longbows have their critical hit rate increased to 50% and their critical hit damage increased to 100%. This is rank 1. For rank 2, against staggered enemies, longbows have their critical hit chance increased by 50% and their critical hit damage increased by 150%. That's all the longbow stuff, and then of course for the final one we have the crossbows. So against strong and strongest bolt variants for crafting, or excuse me, unlock strong and strongest bolt variants for crafting. These bolts deal more damage than regular bolts, so at the crafting table you can pretty much make stronger bolts. At the second rank of advanced missile craft, unlocks unlocks Bard bolt enhancement. Bard bolts deal 5% bleeding damage per second and slows the target for 20 seconds for 6 seconds. Explosion has a 60% hit radius, so that's actually pretty interesting. Aspiring Engineer unlocks recurve crossbow modification. Recurve crossbows deal additional damage. Unlocks crafting recipe for crossbow modification kit at the forge. Crossbow modification kits are used as ingredients for crossbow enhancements. At rank 2, this unlocks the lightweight crossbow modification. Lightweight crossbows have their targets reduced, or have their weight reduced by 30%, and they fire 10% faster. Again, a lot of passive things here. Proficient Engineer unlocks Air Blast crossbow modification. The Ballast, The Ballast crossbow deals 50% more damage against blocking targets and have their weight increased by 50%. That's rank 1. This unlocks the Silent crossbow modification. Silent crossbows have their sneak damage multiplied by 0.5 but fire 15% slower. So if you use any modification to crossbows, they will change pretty much their stats on them. You can either have them fire faster or stronger, have them fire a little bit slower but harder. Just something to play around with in crossbows. Crossbow technician can put 2 crossbow modifications on a single crossbow. So either if you want to have the engineer or the aspiring engineer, any of the bolts, the lightweight, or the silence, you can actually combine those together and have a pretty good all-around archery class for the crossbow. And the mastery for this is skill shot. Grants the lesser power skill shot. When used, ranged weaponry deals 50% more damage and ragdolls targets at 10 feet range or less when at least half drawn for 15 seconds. Can be toggled by using the lesser power again before the duration expires. May be used twice after resting. So you can pop this ability, use it, and then unpop it, then pop it again to reset the ragdoll targets and the weapon percent damage. You can use it twice for combat. A lot of these things here are, again, minus the crossbows, are pretty much just passive things. There's nothing really I can really show off other than probably some of the crossbow stuff and the eagle eye, but if you actually play vanilla Skyrim, you know what the eagle eye actually looks like. But regardless, I can show that off since I do have a bow on me, and then I'll grab a crossbow and show off a little bit of the modification. So here, as you can see, quick zoom in, and time actually does slow down. It's kind of hard to tell. There you go. Just a quick zoom in so you can aim better with the targets. We'll go back into town. I will have a crossbow and I will show off a little bit of the crossbow stuff. So here we are. We're going to be using the Skyforge just for the sake of artistic things. But as you can see, when you have the crossbow modification, which you can get from the miscellaneous here, come down to about under the Steel Centurions if you have that, you'll see the crossbow modification kit. Now, once you have that, any crossbow you get, for the example, we have the Dwarven crossbow, you can see there is modifications that you can make to it. So, if you want it to be lighter and silenced, you can. Now, you can only apply 2 of these at a time, or you can actually only apply 2 modifications to one crossbow if you get the perk, otherwise you can only use 1. I'm not sure if you can switch out between which 2 you use. So, for the sake of this, we're going to, there we go, do the air blast. Now, I need 2 crossbow modifications actually for this. So, what we can do here, just kind of add a crossbow modification here real quick. As you can see, we can actually, now that we have another crossbow modification, we can actually use 1 more. So one we have now is the, I believe the air ballast. So we can either have it silenced, recurve, or lightweight. And as after that, as you can see, we can no longer power up that crossbow. So here's the crossbow that we have modified. And this works for any type of crossbow. Regular, Dwarven, Daedric, anything like that. And the modifications that I've added on. I should forget that it actually doesn't show you the modifications, but we'll go back, I'll take a look at that, and I'll tell you what it does. Okay, so now that I have the page up, the crossbow that we powered up here, as you see, the Dwarven crossbow with the recurve and the R ballast. The R ballast, what that does is it does 50% more damage on blocking targets and has the weight increased by 20% when you shoot them with that, since you're using a lot more heavier arrows, I assume. And the recurve, what that does is it deals additional damage pretty much. Not really something that is really hardcore about it, but it just does additional damage. So it's a very damaging and very powerful crossbow now. So we'll see if we can summon a guard here, or just someone that blocks in general.
You picked a bad time to get lost, friend.
Well, unfortunately she doesn't have a shield, but as you can see, time's actually slowed down as I'm shooting the target. The stagger effects from the crossbow. Very effective stuff. But regardless, again, these are more just passive abilities that are shown off as you've upgraded. That kind of the reoccurring thing with a lot of them, from the light weaponry, ranged weaponry, heavy weaponry, etc., etc. But if you decide to become a warrior with the Perkus Maximus,
Well,
you can pretty much become an unstoppable force depending on how you arm yourself. You can either become a damaging menace, a armored tank, a ranged master, anything you can think of within the warrior mastery. So you have a lot of stuff to play with, but that's going to be it for the entire Perkus Maximus mod. This is a very, very extensive mod. As you can tell, I've done 3 videos, one of them going over an hour, this one probably very close to that. So a lot of stuff to check out, a lot of stuff to play with, and I would recommend kind of mixing some of these around. You can actually do some pretty cool stuff, especially if you decide to become like a light armored thief or a ranged tank or anything like that. A lot of stuff you can do. So I definitely recommend you check out this mod, especially if you want to start over with Skyrim and you want to do a whole new playthrough. This will really determine more of a more class-based, I guess, game, if you want to leave it like that. But you get what I'm saying. This is really good for either starting over in Skyrim if you want to change perks up, stuff like that. So as always, the link will be in the description for the download. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys enjoyed all 3 parts of this. A little longer than I expected it to be, but nevertheless, I highly, highly recommend you check out this mod. Now, we'll catch you guys in the next Skyrim video. Later.